Washington says the thwarted plot to kill the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. will further isolate Iran, with the allegations expected to increase sanctions on Tehran. 2 Iranians were charged over trying to hire members of a Mexican drug cartel to carry out the attack. That's all something that Tehran dismissed as a comedy show. RT's Zetas Mexican reports from Washington.
The U.S. Attorney General explicitly said that the U.S. will be holding the Iranian government accountable for the plot to kill the ambassador of Saudi Arabia to the United States. Also, the U.S. is accusing Iran of conspiring to stage 2 bombings at the Israeli embassy in Washington and at the embassy of Saudi Arabia, also in Washington. And here's how the U.S. Department of Justice came up with those accusations. The FBI and the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency have arrested an Iranian-born U.S. citizen. His name, Mansour Arabsiar. U.S. investigators say the man tried to plot the assassination of the Saudi ambassador to the United States. And for that, according to the Americans, this Iranian man turned to members of a Mexican drug cartel who turned out to be undercover FBI operatives. The Attorney General said the man confessed in the plot and said he was directed by high-ranking Iranian officials. Iran firmly denies the allegations, saying it is a comedy show fabricated by America. Fear-mongering against Iran has been going on for many years now. What they're not bringing up is possible motives behind accusations like that, whether those accusations make any sense at all. Why would the government of Iran want to kill the Saudi ambassador in Washington? Would the Iranians actually do it, taking into consideration the potential fallout? I heard experts on American mainstream channels beating the drums of war, saying things like, we need to step up activities to undermine the government of Iran. Of course, we need to step up cooperation with Saudi Arabia and Israel. As for Iran, some experts believe that undermining the government of Iran has been a long-time coveted goal of the United States. It's not clear how this incident will play out, but it definitely makes the drums of war beat louder here in Washington.
Let's get some more details now and speak to Professor of Political Communication Fouad Ezzadi from Tehran University. Thank you for joining us today. There are a lot of questions being raised here, many saying the information seems sketchy, and Iranians working with Mexican drug dealers also seems bizarre. What do you make of it?
It is bizarre. You know, U.S. intelligence service is quite strong, and it's really difficult to believe that the Iranians would want to contact Mexicans to kill the Saudi ambassador to the U.S. And the guy that is supposed to have done it, I was reading in the wire services today, AP, Reuters, that he was actually a U.S. informant, a U.S. government informant before. And in the previous years, he had drug conventions. He was jailed for robbery. He's a quite troublesome character, the guy who was supposed to be hired by Iranians, as it's alleged by the government, U.S. government. As you know, Iran-U.S. relations have been quite troublesome. U.S. has repeatedly threatened to attack Iran militarily. And whenever you hear accusations from the U.S. government against Iran, you just have to be very careful.
Now, under the guise of NATO, we've seen a Western intervention in places all over the Arab world in recent months. It might seem to some that Iran is next in the crosshairs. Could that be part of it as well? And also, could it be a part of political posturing, as Obama's looking for re-election in 2012, and nothing sells better than thwarting a terror attack in America?
You know, with the awakening in the U.S., with all the demonstrations and all the turmoil that we have internally, a tactic that U.S. government has used throughout its history has been to create an enemy outside. Whenever there is problem inside, whenever there are difficulties, whether it's economic or there are demonstrations or other difficulties, U.S. has been able to create an enemy outside. Russia was the enemy for many, many years, and so we were not bothered, and we were not in Iran considered to be the U.S. enemy. But after basically the Soviet Union, U.S. was looking for another enemy, and Iran has been filling that gap, apparently. So this is a tactic that U.S. has used repeatedly, and it seems that they are sort of using the same tactic again. What is very troublesome is that the story that's being told. The story has a lot of holes in it, And that makes a lot of people worried.
Well, certainly during the era of George W. Bush, when he came up for his second re-election, they claimed to have thwarted another terror attack during that time. And as you're suggesting, for America, it's very profitable to have enemies around the world, considering many say that the defense industry and the energy industries are all in bed together with the politicians in Washington, D.C. So at the end of the day, does this story to you sound legitimate, or is it just some sort of a smoke screen to further some other agenda on the part of Washington?
The information that's provided by the U.S. government just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense for the Iranian government to hire someone who has been in jail in the U.S. repeatedly and has been an informant to the U.S. government. It doesn't make sense for the Iranian government to get in touch with such a person. And why would Iran want to kill the Saudi ambassador in the U.S. with all the security apparatus and all the different levels of intelligence that exist in the U.S.? The location of it, the person that's supposed to be killed, and the person who was supposed to do the killing all raise very difficult questions. And as you said, what has happened in the past, as you know, before the U.S. attacked Iraq some years ago, they alleged that the Iraqi government was going to assassinate President Bush, the first Bush, in Kuwait. So they have come up with these stories before, some government trying to assassinate us or our friends. Now we have to go and attack them. And it's just, I hope that this doesn't happen, because, you know, I'm standing on a rooftop in Tehran, and there are 12 million people living in this city. So a war is the last thing people here need.
Professor of Political Communication Fouad Izzadi from Tehran University, many thanks.